Now, in the previous lesson, we taught you where you have to stop when you are reading the Quran. Now, now we are in this slide, and from this lesson, we will be teaching you the rules of making a stop or a pause. So if you ever have to stop on a word, then how do you stop, and how do you go about doing this? Now, the first one is if the last letter has a fatha, dhamma, or a kasra. And we call any of the letters that have a fatha, dhamma, or a kasra mutaharrik huruf. So if you ever have a mutaharrik huruf at the end, meaning if the last letter has a fatha, dhamma, or kasra, then you have to change that fatha, dhamma, or kasra into a jazm or into a sukun. For example, in the first example you see on your screen, it says walidatuka. Now, if you were reading the Quran and you had to stop on this word walidatuka, then you would, rather than saying walidatuka, you would say walidatuk. And similarly, in the second example, you have the word rusuli. Now, if you were ever reading the Quran and you had to stop on this word, then rather than saying rusuli, you would say rusul. Now, the second rule of making a stop is when you have the tanween of a dhamma or the tanween of a kasra. Now, whenever you see any of these two tanweens and you must stop there, then you have to turn that tanween into a jazm or into a sukun. For example, the first word you have in this example is hafizun. Now, if you were ever reading the Quran and you had the word hafizun, but you had to stop there, then you would say hafiz. So rather than saying hafizun, you would say hafiz. And similarly, in the next example, rather than saying lahabin, you would say lahab. And remember, you must keep the huruf kalkala and all the previous rules in mind. So you would say lahab by shaking it or giving it a jerk. Now, the next one is when you have the kasra ishbaya or the dhamma ishbaya. That is the inverted dhamma or the vertical kasra. Now, if you were ever reading the Quran and you have any one of these, then you have to turn that also into a jazm. So if you look at the first example, it says hamidahu. Now, if you were ever reading the Quran and you came across this word but you had to stop there, then rather than saying hamidahu, you would say hamidah. And remember, you have to make the sound of the ha at the end. You would say hamidah. And similarly, in the second example, rather than saying ghayrihi, you would say ghayri. So again, rather than saying ghayrihi, you would say ghayri.